Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video using files yet again. This time I actually kind of thought of a little actual program to write, and so we're going to go ahead and kind of go through that and show you I guess more of a specific use for files, but let's just show the potential use for files for anything. Alright, let's just get into it. So, like I always like to start, my main function here. Gotta return 0. Alright. So we're going to be using files again. I'm jumping ahead of myself. Stream. Right. So I guess let's just kind of just go ahead and read this. So basically, let me even change this. Let's go read data. Alright, so we're going to have this file. We're going to have, we're going to create this file, I guess, called read data. And there's going to be some data in it. Alright, so we're going to read this file called read data with some data in it about patients in a hospital. So the first line is going to tell us the number of floors in the hospital, and there's going to be, so the first line is going to tell us the number of floors in the hospital and rooms for each of the floors of the hospital. And in the rest of the file, it's going to be a grid of basically empty or taken rooms, which are going to be indicated by a 0 or a 1. So we're going to have to go through the file, basically grab all that. Here's an example input, and we're going to try and find the total number of empty rooms, total number of total rooms, and total rooms per floor, or total empty rooms per floor. I think that's what I meant. And output this to another file. So this is what our input file is going to look like, something like this. And then our output file is going to maybe look something about like this. Total amount of rooms, percentage of empty rooms to total rooms. And then it's going to go through each floor and show how many rooms, either no rooms, no empty rooms at least, or X amount of empty rooms. I guess we should change that, empty rooms. So something like this could be useful, maybe if you're working at a hospital, right, and it'd just be a good idea to kind of know how many rooms are open or something. Who knows? Alright, but let's just get started. So first things first, I'm going to use functions this time. Hopefully you know what functions are. If not, this video, hopefully you can still follow along somehow with this video. I'm going to split this guy up into two different functions. Clearly see we kind of are reading some data and doing something with it, and we're going to be writing some data. So I'm just going to go ahead and make two functions for both of those purposes. So I'm going to make a read file, and I'm going to make a write file function. So here are my function prototypes. Alright, let's get started now. Let's jump into it, as, I don't know, as people say. Alright, so now we have our prototypes. Let's go ahead and just start with our read file function. Alright, just gonna have a return 0 at the end. Yikes. Ooh. Okay. So let's just kind of think about what we need. So we're gonna need basically some variables to be able to hold this data. So first line is going to contain number of floors and the rooms per floor. So we're going to need two variables, one for the number of floors, and another variable for the rooms for each of the floors. So let's go ahead and make some unsigned short ints here. Let's name one floors. Set that guy to 0. And another one for the rooms. Set that guy also to 0. And alright, next thing is along with that, we're gonna need to deal with basically this whole row or grid showing the rooms per each floor. So a good way to do that is clearly, you can think about this as like an x and y axis, right? So if this is our x axis, right, we have 4 x axes and basically 10 y's for each of those x's, right? So it's basically a grid, which is similar to a 2D array. So let's go ahead and make a array that can hold a certain size. So I'm starting with my size of the array, and I'm probably not going to do anything bigger than 20. This is just a basic program. So we got a size now, and so now we can go ahead and we're dealing with basically just numbers. So I'm just gonna make a int here. Let's make this guy also short. Okay. And this guy, I don't know. Let's name it rooms per floor, because this will hold basically the rooms for each of the floors. And these guys are both gonna be size. Oops. And let's get started with this. This should be a good start. And so now we're dealing with files. We're gonna need an fstream object here. So get input, and now we go input file dot open, input file dot close, and just like get that started. So we're opening a file and closing our file near the end when we're gonna be done with it. Alright, so we're gonna need this file, read data. So we're gonna go ahead and make that. So we're gonna go to project, add new item here, under utility, add a text file, and name this read data.text. And in doing so, we've created this text file, as you can see in the Solution Explorer, and it opened up right here. I'm gonna throw this guy right here again, and I'm just gonna go ahead and throw this into our text file. So our input example, I'm just gonna throw that in there. Now let's go ahead and add our read data.text file. This guy's got to be a string, so put those in quotes. And let's do our file checking, make sure this guy opens up correctly so we don't get any errors or crash the program. Alright, so if input file open successfully, error. And when we have this error, I'm going to go ahead and return, let's do it this way. Exit failure. Let's have the exit success. Alright, so that's just kind of going to return so our program doesn't crash, it just will close. And now we're going to put all our juicy stuff once we open this file here. So first things first, we're going to try and deal with the first line here, right? So if we have 4 and 10, that's going to be the first line of code. So if you remember, when we're trying to input stuff, or get input from the file, right, we're going to take from the file into our variables, and so we're going to get our floors first, right? So we should have basically 4 floors, and then we should have 10 rooms. And so again, all this is separated by a space in here, so we should grab this 4 into floors, space, 10 into our variable rooms. Okay, now we've got that. Now we have to deal with the rest of it. So we have our 2D array, and hopefully by now you should realize when you're dealing with arrays, for loops are your good friends. And since this is a 2D array, we're going to need a nested for loop. So let's go with int, maybe name this guy like floor. I'm just going to name it f for floor. And so while f is less than floors, we're going to increment floors. Go through each of those floors. And now we're gonna have int r, int rooms, so all r is less than rooms. We're gonna increment there. And so now we've got our nested loop set up. Now we are going to be able to put our data into our array here. Alright, what do we name this guy? Rooms per floor. Alright, so with F, floors and rooms. So that's going to set us up to input all the data into our array. And I guess maybe we can continue on. I hope you guys are confident in this, in the nested arrays or nested loops and putting items into a 2D array. So, since we are putting something, yeah, maybe I will do this, but since now we are putting stuff into this array, I didn't call this function, that's right. Alright, in our main function, we gotta call this function, so it actually does it. Alright. And so, we have our input file, and we're going to be putting into this empty array, as you can see right now. That is not what I'm looking at, sorry. I'm looking at this guy. So there's a bunch of nonsense in there right now. So we're going to be just looking at the first floor just to see. And basically when we're going to put data in there, as we go through this, we grab that 0 and put in the first element of floor 0. Or so the first room of floor 0. And then we grab that next one, put that guy. And basically we're just filling this whole first floor with its corresponding rooms. So we have empty, full, 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 empty, empty, full, full, empty, empty. And so that's what we're doing here. Just kind of filling this array here. You can kind of see it populate as I step through this. And so that should be it. We have our 0 through 9, which should be 10. That should allow us to now go... Oops, I think we did. I guess skipped ahead a bit too much. But now we are on the first floor. Or second floor, I guess. Sorry, saying floors and arrays and stuff, I keep messing up. But when I mean first, I'm talking about element 0, subscript 0 in the array. And when I'm talking about second, I meant, element 1 or subscript 1. Element 2, sorry. So it's subscript 1 and subscript 0. Alright, and so you can see since we're doing this, and it puts it basically in instantly, so like, let's say, so we're on r equals 2, so we're basically right here, and so as soon as we put that guy in, it does it. So what we can actually do is now actually use our array within here to find out if it's a 0 or a 1. So of course, to do that, we need a comparison, so I'm going to use a if statement here. And we're going to say if rooms per floor fr is equal to 0, right? So if we got a number that is 0 in our array, we're going to want to do stuff. And that is it. The programmer is just going to ask for basically empty rooms. And I believe we are asking, there was something else. So total empty rooms and then total rooms in like total. So basically what we can also do is we're going to need one more variable here. And I'm just going to make another unsigned short int. Name this guy total rooms, I guess. Set it equal to 0. And so since we're going through this for loop, basically we're putting each item into here, right? So kind of right after this, we can just have a counter going, and this will count each of those rooms. So if we do total rooms plus plus, this guy will be our counter for total amount of rooms. Okay, so now we've got our if statement, or now we've got, some of the other stuff. Let's go into our if statement. And now we need a counter for empty rooms, right? And this is exactly what we want. If we want uh, if the room is a 0, right, that means it's empty. That means you want to account for it, have a counter going for that. So let's go ahead and make another one. Total empty. I don't know. Set that guy to 0 as well. And so let's go ahead and increment that guy as well. And so now we got a counter for total empty rooms. Cool. And now here comes a bit of a tricky part. So this is going to be the total amount of empty rooms. So this is going to count through all of this and count each of those zeros for each thing. But if we want to find the total empty per floor, right? So in floor 1, we want to know, okay, how many empty rooms are in floor 1, right? So in floor 1, we have 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, right? So we have 5 zeros in there. We want to be able to count, have a count for the max of 5 empty rooms for that floor. So yet again, we're going to need another counter, and let's just go like maybe per floor. And since we need to know how many, since we need to count when it's empty, I'm going to go ahead and add this guy back in here. And so now you may be wondering, how are we going to do that? Or how are we going to count for each of the max per row? But okay, so now we have a counter for total empty rooms per floor. Alright. And now I know these variables look the same, but we're going to be doing something with it in just 1 second. So now that we have gone through one whole floor, right, we've gone through each of the rooms for the floor, we're going to have to put some data somewhere. And so I think a good choice is going to be using another array. Might be some bad names, but let me see, maybe I can name this something different. We have rooms per floor. Let's just name this maybe just floor, and then like times rooms. Nah, I don't know. Alright, I'm just gonna keep it. Alright, so now we have another array. So basically, what we're accounting for in this one is accounting for each floor. And so since we have, and basically just an example, we have 4 floors. Each one of these is going to be accounting for 1 floor. So just it'll be basically like a 1 dimension of just this, and it'll just hold the total. It won't hold each of the values for each of the rows. So now we can go ahead, and we've gone through 1 row, right? So this is where we're going to want to put this after we've gone through 1 total floor, or gone through all the rooms for 1 floor. What am I doing? So we've got total per floor, total rooms per floor, and this guy is going to be F. So at whatever floor, we're going to assign that to our per floor variable. So as we've gone through each of the rooms, it'll accumulate how many rooms we have per each there, and then we basically set that number to another array. And now this is where it's going to be different than total, is we're going to reset this guy. So basically reset counter to 0. So that next time we go through floor number 2, it's going to reset to 0 and count each room for basically floor 2. And then set that guy again to floor 2, etc., etc. Hopefully that makes sense. It'll make more sense when we go through and debug it. Okay, so that's looking good so far. And this might be all we have to do for reading our inputs. I should have closed it a while ago. But let's go ahead and see how well this works. I guess that'll work. Alright, so let's go ahead into debug. Kind of open up floor 0 here. And so we've inserted a 0 in there. We got a room. And now we're basically comparing, okay, now that we have this guy, is this guy a 0? Which indeed it is, so we're going to go in here, increase that it's empty, and it is empty per that floor. And we're going to go through again, and we've got a 1, not a 0, so don't care, it's filled. Another 1, it's filled, do not care. And yet again, another 1, do not care. Alright, now we got another one. Now we've got another 0. And so we're going to go down here. If it is 0, increment yet again. Increment the empty rooms per floor. And continue to go through. And we've got another 0 now, so it's going to go through. And again, I'm just going to continue through the rest of this. We got another 1, another 1, another 0. And lastly, we are on our last element. We have 0 through 9. So we have another 0. So increment for that last time. So right now, our total empty is going to be 5. So we have 5 total empty, and we have 5 empty for that row. So now we're going to basically exit this for loop. And now we're at, let's see, f is equal to 0. So we're going to put at floor 0, or floor 1, we're going to put 5. That's how much we had. And now we're going to reset this guy to 0. So that way when we go through again, we're back at 0 and we can recount for that floor. But now we're still keeping the total count. So basically we just have a total count and we have a count for each floor. And that looks like it takes care of reading the file so far. So let's move on to now trying to write some of this data to this file so that our output hopefully looks, something like this. Alright, so looks good. And now we're going to go ahead and write file, turn, exit, success. Make sure this guy returns exit, success. Alright, sorry, on my nose. Okay. So now what are we gonna need from this in this write file? So we have all our stuff in this read file basically. So what are we gonna need from our read file that we're gonna have to pass to our write file? And well, I will tell you. Hopefully you can maybe think about it, pause the video, think about it. But since we have this array here for each floor, we have the maximum for each floor in this array. That's going to be some very useful piece of information. So we're going to want to pass that guy to be able to output the floors to the file. So I'm going to make this parameter const unsigned short int, and let's name this guy total per floor as well. And another thing we're going to need to pass in for the C-style arrays, I should always mention that these guys with the brackets like this, when we declare them, are C-style arrays. So maybe I should write a little note, C-style arrays. And so this is how you pass in a C-style array to a function. Basically just kind of write the data type of the array, and then array name, and then those brackets, empty brackets. And it will be different for a 2D array. Alright, so now we're also going to need the size. So we're going to need the floor size. And then that'll help us basically loop through the array for each floor. And now let's go ahead and add this guy, because we're going to need to know how many, once we tally up all of these guys, we're going to need to know how many to be able to print them out. And so let's go total. I'm just going to go ahead and close this guy. Alright, so we've got an array we're passing in, basically the size of the array, the count of how many times we're going to loop, the total amount of empty rooms, and the total rooms. Alright, so now that we're going to be writing to a file, well, we're going to need an OF stream. Output file. So create the output file stream. Alright, so yet again with files, I want to make sure we open it correctly. So I'm going to go else, if else, I don't know what I'm saying. Output file. So we success and then error. Alright, so now we've got this set up. We're going to be putting all the juicy stuff in this if statement here. So let's start with something simple here. We're going to go ahead and write to this file. Let's go ahead and put in the total amount of empty rooms that we counted. And we want to keep it nice and clean, so we're going to unline there. And again, we're going to do the percentage. So now the percentage of empty rooms to total rooms are. We're going to do basically a little calculation there. But one thing to note about calculation, so let's just quickly go back. So based off this, the percent, we're just trying to do a percent. And we're just going to do basically an integer percentage. So we're not going to have basically any decimals for this percent. And you might think that's kind of easy, but here we're using all ints. And in programming, you can't really do division with integers. It'll become 0. I'm not sure if every time it's 0, but from what I've seen, it becomes 0. So we're going to have to do some fun little things called static casting. So basically what a static cast is the format is just kind of like this, and in the little arrows here is going to be the data type. So we want this percentage to be an int. We want the percentage to be an integer, but we have to do calculations with a different data type. And so basically what we're going to be casting is within this parentheses. So this will take from what's in the parentheses and cast that to an integer value. And so now this is we're going to have to do something that might make it a little more tricky, but we're going to have to do another cast first because we are dealing with integers and we cannot do integer division. So what we're going to have to do is basically do another static cast to a float value. And so let's go ahead and change one of these guys. So let's just change total empty to a float. And then now that we have a float value, we can actually do a calculation. So essentially what we're doing here is taking this one variable that's an integer, casting that to a float. So once we have a float, we can now do our division correctly. So that way, basically once you turn one of them into a float, it kind of turns the other one or something, and then so it can do calculation and give decimals. And so now that we have our percentage, basically now to find percentage, right, we're going to want to multiply all of that by 100. And so this should be good now. We should be calculating our percentage right. Just go ahead and throw in a percent symbol after that. And that is going to be how we calculate our percentage there. And now we're actually getting super close to the end here. We've got just a bit more. So now that we have our total empty and our percentage for total, we're going to want to, well, basically we kind of use the other variables. Now we're going to be dealing with our other two variables here, the array and the floors. And so now to loop through those floors, guessed it, hopefully we're going to use another for loop. Alright, get in there, bro. And so I'm going to name this guy, no, I'm going to name this guy floor. Alright, we're going to start this guy at 0 again, because we're going to kind of just loop through each floor, and then print out how many rooms are in each floor. How many empty rooms are in each floor, not the rooms. Alright, so we're going to do floors less than floors. That's what we named our variable. And the reason, one reason why I like the colors is because we can clearly see kind of the difference between these two variables kind of now. We know that floor is this orange variable we made here, and floors here is a purple variable, so that's a argument that we passed in through the function. So those can kind of help tell the difference between some different similar maybe variable names that you might be using. Alright, so now in this for loop, we're going to be doing some calculation, or some comparisons, yet again. So we're going to need some if statements. And let's quickly look at the little thing. So first off, we want to display which floors, or basically we want to have a way to display floors that have empty rooms, and then basically just the other floors that have X amount. This should be an X amount of empty rooms. So to make it easy on ourselves, instead of trying to compare to a bunch of numbers, if we just compare our array here, totals per floor, and we do per floor. If this guy is equal to 0, that means, if that floor is 0, there's 0 empty, then we're going to want to output to our file here that this floor has no empty rooms. Alright, so this floor is going to be full. Alright, and that takes care of the empty rooms. And since we kind of have empty rooms or no empty rooms or has empty rooms, well, we can just go ahead and use an else here. Output file. Oh god, I completely skipped a step. I was going ahead of myself. Hopefully you caught that at some point. Let's just finish this guy. So floor is gonna has, and then we're gonna be able to grab the amount of floors it has because it's gonna be stored in our array here. So we're just gonna go ahead and output our array, and that will output the amount of floors. And so amount of rooms. Alright, big thing I skipped, going a bit too fast. We gotta open our file. And we gotta close our file. Ooh. Alright, so since we have a read data, we're gonna go ahead and make another text file. Let's go write file. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw this guy over here. And now let's go ahead and open this guy up for our output file, our file to be able to write to. Alright, and so far so good. Looks like we might just about be done. Let's double check some stuff. Okay, we are gonna be missing one final thing. So luckily, so we have our output done. Basically just writing all the output to the output file done. And so now there's one last thing we gotta do, which is actually Kylo's file. And so we're gonna call this file in here. And now we're gonna have to pass in all those parameters. So we're gonna pass in our total rooms per floor array, pass it in just like that. We're gonna have to pass in our floors variable. And then total empty, that's this total empty counter. Total empty. And then that last guy is the total rooms, remember? And so we have this count tool for total rooms. It's counting each of those. And we have total rooms. Alright. So I'm just going to go ahead and throw some breakpoints in. And let's give it a run. See if this guy is all good. Ooh. We have build errors. Does not take 4 arguments. Ooh, I forgot one thing. Alright, so we have our function prototype up here. And we forgot to do this. So I'm kind of just going to copy this guy, which I maybe shouldn't do. It's always kind of bad practice to do some copying. But I've already got my write file set up, and these are the exact parameters. And we can even go ahead and delete these names in case we wanted to change them. And that will just be the definition for the data types we're going to be passing through. So we're going to be passing in, const unsigned short int array, and the rest of these const unsigned short ints. And the reason why these guys are all consts is because we're not changing them. We're not messing with that data. We're just comparing data and inputting data to a file. We're not trying to manipulate it, calculate it, or anything like that. And I know you might be wondering, well, oh, we are calculating it here, but we're not changing the data in here. We're outputting a calculation. So it's taking basically this total amount of total empty and just dividing it into an output. It's not putting it back into one of these variables. We're not reassigning these guys. Alright, and so this, I believe so, should be good. Let's give that guy another run. Alright, I'm going to remove this breakpoint. Alright, so far so good. Looks like that went in smoothly. Looks like we... Ooh, no, that's not 4. 3. Ooh, okay. Interesting. This did not do what I wanted it to do. Where is our floor variable? Oh, I'm kidding. We are still in this array. They go in it a couple times. My bad. I'm trying to skip ahead of myself. Alright, so we got FS2 and FS3. Okay, so now we should be on this last row, and now we should be able to take a quick peek. And okay, we've got basically all our data in here. Now let's take a quick peek at this total rooms. So we should see now that in floor 0 we have 5 empty seats, or geez, 5 empty rooms. I don't know where that came from. In floor 2 we have no empty rooms, are all filled. In floor 3 we have 10 empty rooms, and in the last floor, floor 4, we have 7. And that should be good. So that seemed to work perfectly, so now let's go ahead and start writing this to a file. Oops, I guess I just skipped through all that. But I went through all this, and let's just take a quick peek, see if it works out correctly, or if we did miss anything. Alright, so we've got total amount of rooms. There are 22, and 22 out of 40. Because we have 4 times 10, so we have 40 total rooms. So 22 out of 40 is about 55%, I guess. And now we should see floor 0 has 5 amount of rooms. That kind of looks weird. Let's change this. Has 5 empty rooms. That might look a little better. Alright, let's give this guy another run without debugging. Just have it run through. Okay, this looks a little better. So floor 0 has 5 empty rooms, as it does. Floor 1 is completely full, no empty rooms. Floor 2 has 10, and floor 3 has 7. Alright, we did it. We got through a little program with reading and writing to files. And so our output looks exactly kind of like we wanted it to. Hopefully you guys were able to follow this pretty clearly. Hope this helped with something. Hope you learned something about files, arrays, passing through functions, something. But this was just my little program I wrote for, I don't know, patient rooms in a hospital. Hope you guys learned something. If you guys are kind of liking these videos, make sure to subscribe. I'm hoping to do a lot more. I plan to do a lot more, because I find there are some kind of outdated tutorials nowadays. I mean, they still hold up, but I think I can put my own spin on it. But hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you learned something, and I'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye.